Hey everybody, I'm Jason Hayes.
I'm Savannah Harvey.
We're making this video because people have a lot of questions when they're first getting into Nuke. Over the last 11 weeks, Savannah and I have had the pleasure to get into a break-in period where we got to learn Nuke for the first time and mess with a few of the basics. We even create a basic project. And right now, what we're here to do is to talk about our experience getting into it. First, to explain, Nuke is a video compositing software, much like After Effects. And the one thing I liked about Nuke is it behaved very differently. And it seems very intimidating at first when you look at it. Overall, there's a lot of ways that Nuke is actually more simple than a compositing software such as After Effects, or I don't really have another frame of reference, but that's the main reference I do have, which is also the most accessible. What we're going to do is we first want to talk about our experience with Nuke.
When we had to do like the research about it, it was intimidating because it's like, oh gosh, all these high profile companies and animators work with it, and it's just like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so complicated. It's going to be like way too much for us to do in what, not 10 weeks? 11 weeks?
Yeah, about 10 or 11 weeks. And 3 of those weeks we didn't even really work on it.
Yeah,
we had to do
PowerPoints.
Yeah, we still got one more PowerPoint we got to do.
We did like the tutorials or just like opened it up to screw around in it. It was like, oh, I just have to press tab and type what I need. That's awesome. Because then it's just like, oh, it's right there. Yay.
Yeah, what Savannah's talking about, After Effects works in a system called layers. What's nice about layers is kind of how they imply. You stack one on top of the other, and each one affects the other based on how you have them stacked and the size of each video when you're dealing with programs such as After Effects. But Nuke is actually based on a node-based program, so there are no layers. And you have to kind of figure out how each node is going to affect the other one, either upstream or downstream. It seems like it should be very, very simple. And it's not that it's overly complicated, but if you don't know the correct order to put these nodes, it can be very, very hard. But what's really nice is, like Savannah's saying, you're figuring out, like, see all these tools on the sidebar, like Maya or After Effects, but I'm like, I don't know where all these tools are going to be up here. But then all you have to do is go down to the node panel, and you just have to hit tab. And if you already know what you're looking for, you can just type it up and just bring it right into play. And I really like that about Nuke. Now, when I started out Nuke, I was excited because I actually had heard of Nuke before. I even downloaded the software 2 years ago to start playing with it, but I really just didn't know what to do with it.
No, I heard of it. They just never...
Yeah.
Like, there's this, but we don't have time.
Messing with it. I knew what Nuke was used for, but I just didn't know how to use it. And it really kind of frustrated me that we didn't have the opportunity to use it here.
And no one knows it.
Yeah, nobody knows it around here. Nobody knows it.
I thought some people would have known it. It's like, oh yeah, it's like I've dabbled, but I'm not a professional at it. It's like, okay, help us. Nope.
Yeah, no, nobody knows. So yeah, so there's no one to really help us with that. So when I first got into this, I'm not gonna lie, I was a little overconfident. Because I'm thinking, we got Pluralsight, we got all these tutorials, we got YouTube, we gotta get this figured out. And essentially we did, but it just didn't happen as quickly or as smoothly as I'd hoped. I had all these resources to help us complete the project, but it was a little harder to work with because, we had other classes we had to do, we had other assignments we had to do, and then on top of that, we had to basically teach ourselves this program because the instructor, even he admits, he doesn't know Nuke. Everyone in the class was learning a different program based on their major and what kind of area they wanted to specialize in. So what I wanted to specialize in and what Savannah wanted to specialize in, Nuke was the only program we hadn't touched. And so it was the one program that kind of stuck out, like, hey, we got to do this one.
I like it.
Yeah?
So far.
Yeah,
except for all the trip-ups we've had where it's like, oh gosh, got to figure this out.
Yeah, that was one. Yeah, so the process was like we had to use Pluralsight to start learning the program, but there were always these little issues like a timeline. Well, yeah, the timeline. If you know what an EXR file is, an EXR file is an image. I don't know what all kinds of programs can create them, but it's kind of like a PNG. Usually they're very high rendered files that can be imported After Effects, can be imported into Nuke as if they're video, as long as you keep them sequenced properly. But the problem we kept running into is that every time we throw it in there, we could have an EXR folder of like 200-300 images, and it only would create what's called a read node, which is basically like what all your videos and stuff tend to be as a read node. Split it in half. We had issues with that, so.
I used the Foundry website because when I would Google it,
yeah,
it would say like Foundry, and I was like, okay, and I clicked it, and it came up Oh, okay. Like
Yeah.
Foundry.
We had to come up with a project that we had to figure out on our own. We had to figure out how we're going to put it together, how we were going to layer it, how we were going to animate it. Then there was a lot of curveballs with that because we were thinking about modeling a jet in Maya because I wanted to model a jet because I wanted to be able to get different camera angles. Because the reality is if you use a picture of a real jet, there's no guarantee what angle you're going to get it at. You don't know if it's going to be at the camera angle you need. And we even had to collect videos. Now, there's some things we couldn't get, like we can't get videos of a cloud other than downloading stock. So we couldn't go out there and like take pictures ourselves of clouds. So we had to sit there and we had to meet those challenges of getting those good camera angles where angle of the camera on like whenever we're flying a jet would match the video. But the only way to guarantee that is if you have an object that you can turn in space and take a video of. So that left us with the option of having to either to build one. Fortunately, we were able to instead find one for free that we could download. It was a real basic jet model, but I think it came out pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Probably didn't have to pay for one because there were some expensive ones, and then there were some like
yeah, some of them were like
cheap
$200,
ones.
$300, you know.
That was with textures.
But I would say probably about the whole time we were training and learning Nuke, I would say I had spent a good 75% in Pluralsight, just learning the tools to work with Nuke. I'd say another 10%, if that, 5 to 10%. I was on YouTube videos, learning Nuke, and then the last 15% was just us playing around. Like, what does this button do? What does that do?
What happens if I attach this to this?
Yeah, because there's a lot of things they didn't really explain. Like the basics were very, very simple. I felt like you really could have made an entire class just on what each of these nodes they use are and how you would organize them to make a confident composition. I just felt like there's so many different nodes, and if you didn't know what they did, it was kind of like,
They could have multiple classes just for you.
yeah, just for the nodes, if you ask me. You know, just setting up a composition to make it do certain things. Granted, we were taking something called new core skills, so it wasn't going to do into the in-depth studies of doing a node. So,
What is a node?
yeah, what is a node? Whenever you deal with nodes, instead of like layering them on top of each other, you connect them. It becomes like a network of these little images that are called nodes. They're little graphs that you connect one to the other, and you can organize them however you want. It's just not layer based. They're not stacked on top of each other. Instead, you have to work in something it's similar to a stack, but it's called a node tree. But the thing is with node trees can go everywhere. You can have a straight node tree that's connected to this, then you have this top one connected to the bottom one, and it's just like sometimes there's no rhyme or reason of how they all connect together, but
As long as it works. It was confusing because it's like, wait, I have to connect this to this. I'm so used to just having the layers and maybe like grouping them together in like a folder.
yeah. I would say one of the greatest challenges for me was just the fact that it was a small project, but there were so many things I wanted to do. Well, I wanted an actor singing in the cockpit, but you didn't want to do
No,
that.
I didn't.
So I'm going to get the embarrassment of that. I wanted to have an actor sitting in the cockpit. I wanted to see the environment through the glass behind the cockpit, which was actually surprisingly difficult. And because it wasn't layer based, I couldn't just stack them. I had to figure out how and when to merge these two elements together. It wasn't as easy as an infinite stack. You had to connect them in certain ways to make them layer on top of one another. You even had to create a whole new node just to export it. Yeah, that's how complicated it got. You had a node to view it. There's a node to export it. There was a node for everything. And I really wanted to have, I wanted to make it crazy with all these bubbles going everywhere. I want the contrail to be bubbles, but we never really got to all that. But I would say by the end of it, we came up with a pretty satisfiable project. Because it told the story. It told the story.
And it's our first time in Nuke.
It's our first time doing it in Nuke. It's give or take, so.
Biggest challenge, well, after we got over the EXR splitting up thing,
Yeah.
it was the timeline because we couldn't zoom out to see which frames we had where we could move where the starting point was going to be, and it wouldn't go past 100 frames. And we were both like, why isn't this working? Why?
Yeah.
to be on global, not.
And she's talking about the
thing.
timeline.
Yeah, the timeline.
The timeline had to be global. It had to be. There's a certain setting because it was like limiting how big our videos, how much we're being able to see, how much we're being able to render, and we had to set certain settings on the timeline. And there's this little drop-down box on the side. It's either viewable or global. There's a couple different settings you can use for the timeline.
And I thought it was something like way more complicated in like the presets, but it was just a tiny little bar on the timeline. And
Yeah.
drop it down.
And Nuke just behaves so differently. It really does. It behaves so much more, so differently, and you really have to have an idea of how you want to organize your compositions in order to make it work. No, I had to use like 8 different nodes just to make one simple video of me in the cockpit with transparency in the back, and I see the video behind me, and then I'm turning and stuff like that. Had to do green screen, key light. There was so many different nodes just to make that happen. It was fun, but it was a challenge at the same time because I was about ready to pull my hair out sometimes. Now, when we're talking about meeting a challenge, we knew we were going into unfamiliar territory and that we weren't going to have a lot of interactive help. In other words, we couldn't just ask somebody and they just get back to us and now we got it, you know. We really had to dig our own answers out. My former instructor and friend from California, Anwei Chen, she helped us out a good bit on some of those really tough challenges that were really kind of beating me up. But it wasn't always easy because, you know, she's very busy because she actually works in the field all the time. She was completely willing to help, and she always got back to me as soon as she could. She was always very active about getting the questions answered. While she was trying to get her end, trying to figure stuff out on her end, we had to keep being active. You know, she was just there to help us during those really tough times when we couldn't really work with it. But yeah, so if I'm always looking, big shout out, thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you. There was the other problem where it was like merging the 2 layers.
Yeah, we were getting this issue where the layers would mix. You know, like they have a little layer there called mix, but I don't know what it is. It's just like they're both kind of transparent through each other. So as imagine you can see my hand, but imagine you can see both my hands at the same time, even though they're one back behind the other. You can actually see the bottom of my hand kind of slightly through the front of my hand, you know, and it just didn't. It didn't really make sense why that was happening.
No,
It really didn't make sense why that was happening, but. That was one of the issues. That was the big issue I needed help with because
we had them both plugged into the same thing.
Yeah,
like the A and the B.
Yeah, we used a merge node, and is when we used a green screen. That's when we actually, you know, was able to make it solid. Like we used a green screen and EXR files worked great too. But again, the problem we ran into with that was it limited the number of frames we were using, which was like we need a lot of frames. You know, a lot more than 100. Just 1 3-second cut, or if you want even a 5-second cut, you're looking at like what? You're looking over 100 frames, easy. At 24 frames a second, like well over 100 frames. You're looking at like 130, 140 frames. A lot of the cuts we did required more than a few seconds. We each broke it up. We had regular meetings to help us complete it. There's a lot more details I could have worked on. There's a lot more things I wish I could have done with it, but it just wasn't happening. What did you think about your whole experience with it?
I enjoyed it. It was like challenging to learn something else. It was cool because then you got to see what other people, like for the PowerPoints, we found a video for it, and Game of Thrones uses it a lot.
Yeah, Game of Thrones uses Nuke. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, and I was like, oh, cool.
I think it's like, I didn't want to say it's like the studio's, what is it, like Image Engine or something like that uses it? Yeah, they actually imported the 3D dragon and everything into the composition.
Yeah, it was crazy when we watched that the first time, because then we watched it the second time, and we were like, oh, that's where that is. Like, then I watched it again while we were working on it. It's like, I know what that is.
Yeah.
But I don't know what the rest of it is.
If I get a chance, I would use Nuke again. I would love to see what other projects I get out and see how much more I can learn using Nuke. It's been a great experience. If anyone can have an opportunity to use it, I'd highly recommend using it. Just trying it out. Don't let the nodes intimidate you. It's actually easier than you think. It just requires some time just learning to mess with the projects. I mean, a lot of ways it's very, very simple because you've got your nodes here, got your attribute editor, just basically like changing the different styles, and then you got your viewer. And it's that simple. The layout is very simple. Then you got your tools on the left side, which is like that in every art software in existence. I think this has been a very fun project. It's just too bad we didn't get to do more. I actually wanted to do a lot more.
Because like we got the hang of it, and it's like time.
Yeah.
It takes a while to render. I'd want the bubble contrail.
Yeah, I wanted the bubble contrail
Because then we
too.
could like at the end like have it just like explode with bubbles. And,
Oh,
like,
that'd be
scene where,
kinda
like
cool.
after the blast, like have it zoom off again, and then just have bubbles just consume the screen.
That would have been cool. Actually, now that you said that.
We have 1 week. We can do it.
Yeah, I don't think we can
So-
do it in 1 week. Yeah, anyone who wants to learn Nuke, I would say definitely learn Nuke, and this has been a fun project for us.
They have a free trial for it for a year. And
For a year?
For a year, I think.
That's a very generous free trial.
And then they actually do have a student one. They have the like student payment where it's like $200, and you get like a ton of stuff.
Wait, $200 for what?
Like Nuke, and a couple other things that they have through the
What-
Foundry.
Is it a subscription or is it just
I think it's a subscription.
for how long? Like 200 of what?
I don't know. I just saw 200 and I was like, and it's
See,
like
now I gotta check this out because I don't know if it's for a month, a year. If it's a month, there's no way I'm paying that. But if it was like for a year, that's
for a year that'd be great.
that actually wouldn't be so bad because that's about what you spend on Creative Cloud. I guess it depends if you have the student version. If you have the student version, it's about $240 a year. If you have the regular one, it's almost like four something a year for Creative Cloud, and you're just paying that between $20 and $40 increments depending on whether or not you're a student. But if you're talking about like that, just for Nuke, that's actually not a bad idea. I would pay for that.
Because they have a student like bar on the Foundry website. I forgot what else that comes with it, but I saw Nuke at the top, and there's a little list of other stuff.
Biggest advice I would say before leaving out is like if you're going to learn Nuke, try to use credible sources. I mean, YouTube is good. On YouTube, there's a lot of really good instructors who are doing things like if you're doing drawing, Stan Proco is really good. If you're doing After Effects, they do have some good tutorials. But Nuke seems to be one of those things that if you're looking for something very specific to do, you really have to have an idea of what you're doing. It's kind of hard to find, other than if you go to the Foundry's websites, to find really solid tutorials. I would recommend you at least try to go someplace like some kind of tutorial website. If you don't know anybody who knows Nuke, it really help you get along to at least the basics of what you're doing. If you like this video, please like it. And the video we did, please check that out. Please keep in mind, we are students. This channel is about growth. So it's basically about people like me and Savannah, how we're learning how to be animators and sharing that experience with you. So please keep that in mind when you're watching these videos. Please keep that in mind when you're asking questions. If you like what we're doing, please subscribe and please leave comments. We love comments. I love comments anyway. I don't know, maybe you don't like comments. I'm always eager to learn more about the animation field. So please keep in mind. Again, this is a channel about growth. It's helped us grow. Hopefully, it'll help you grow too. Jason Hayes,
I'm Savannah Harvey.
and y'all have a great day. Thanks.